stream and that comes with Greenbelt status. This first property that you're looking at in item number 7 is one that was rolled back. It's 16.34 acres in Lehigh. And it was taken off Greenbelt due to not meeting the agricultural production requirements. The taxpayer reached out to the county's farmland assessment analyst, had some conversations with her. You can see in your packet photographs and information about why it was pulled off of Greenbelt status. After the rollback, they made some efforts to get fencing put up and to have some cattle in the very last week of the year last year placed on that property, but that was after the rollback. It's what the statutory framework requires is that you look at the most recent 2 years, and in the most recent 2 years, it was not in compliance, not having that active devotion to agricultural production as required under the law, and not having sufficient animal units per month to really be in active production, and so it was removed from Greenbelt status. The assessor's office's farmland assessment analyst is here. I'd like to invite her up to answer a few questions. If you have any questions about the specifics of what happened and why this one was removed from Greenbelt status, the taxpayer may be here as well, but it's the recommendation of the assessor's office that this application be denied. This property did not have the requisite active devotion to agricultural production, the reasonable expectation of profit. It didn't have production during the most recent 2 years. And though there is a plan in the future to do beehives, it looks like that's not what we're looking at as future plans. We're looking at the last 2 years and whether those were in compliance with the production requirements. And on this parcel, they were not.
Okay. Any questions for Ben?
Not for Ben or for staff.
Hear from the landowner first. Okay. Is the landowner here? Like to speak to that? Okay.
My name's Kelson Gorell, and I work for Ridge Rising. So we have been farming this land since 2013. We were farming it. In 2020, we lost our water rights. We lost our access to water on that due to neighboring properties and their development. So it went to dry farming, and we worked it in that time period, doing everything we can. We have no plans for future bees. We have plans just for cows on it for the future. During that time when we were dry farming and we were trying all sorts of different things to develop this land, we put some bees on it to try and help the land. And now we have cows on it, and from everything I can see, our cows have met the qualifications for Greenbelt for 2022. I don't see where we haven't met those qualifications, as we've, during when we lost our water and we were in the toughest drought we've had in years, production was limited due to that, but not due to us not farming the land. I think we've sent in plenty of documentation showing that we've been farming it and will continue to farm it, and that's our plan going forward.
My name is Andrew Bybee, one of the principals at Ridge Rising in Stack Real Estate. We've also brought Carl Karen, who has been the gentleman farming this since 2014. So if you have any questions for Carl, that would be welcomed as well.
Okay.
So you said you've had it since 2014
13.
or 13?
2013, I don't remember if maybe it is 2013. It's 2013 or 2014.
Okay.
But we started using Carl at that time, right at when we purchased that, and Carl's been doing the farming since then.
Okay. So there's no plan. The bees were just trying to help pollinate the ground, is what you're saying on the bees.
In the dry farm season,
Yeah.
there was an understanding that bees helped qualify for Greenbelt. So to make sure that there was a overlap, we dry farmed and beed. We added bees. Then there was feedback from the assessor's office that bees did not do that. So we said, well, then we need to add cows, because the whole intent has been to keep this in Greenbelt until at the time it's ready to develop. And we've been doing everything we can since 2014 to make that so. And so that's why we rushed to get cows on, to make sure that it was seen that we have been doing what we can since 2014 to do this. And if bees were not appropriate, unbeknownst to us, then we will get cows on it immediately. That's why we rushed to do that in the last week of the year.
Okay. And when did the cows come back? I guess is my question. When were the cows put on the ground?
Last week of the year of 2022,
Okay, so end of December 22. Okay.
which is when we got the notice that bees were not appropriate.
Okay.
So in 2020, you lost the water because of development.
Go ahead and talk. My name's Carl Karen. I'm the owner of a company called Karen Land and Livestock. My wife and I, and we run about 280 mother cows, mainly in Utah County, Eagle Mountain, Lehigh. I was farming this ground prior to their purchase of it, and then before that, there was a guy named Chuck Revel. And we had water, and we were growing hay and feeding cows and selling hay, and that went all the way up until 2019. In 2019, directly kind of to the northeast, Lehigh City built a road called Triumph Boulevard. I don't know if many of you have been on Triumph Boulevard, and it goes underneath the railroad tracks. There's a great big cut, and it goes down. And when they did that, they took out the ditch, because the ditch came from the Bull River, which was up along SR 92. And then they came back and they put a siphon in to try and provide water. But because they had torn up all the ground, the siphon kept plugging up. And so basically I didn't have the ability to irrigate anymore after 2019. And I have a letter, Diane will probably have it. It kind of has the dates and how it kind of laid out. And I wrote that back in April of 21, so you can kind of get an idea of what happened. Got sorghum sedan grass in 2019, came back in the spring of 2020 and drilled a dryland pasture mix on the property. But 20 and 2021 were horrible precipitation years, and it just didn't do very well. Always looking for places to put cows. My understanding was I still had access to this piece of ground, even though I hadn't talked to them for a while. And in December, I moved 28 heifers after I talked to them, and there'd been nothing on it for 2 years. And so the top half was never irrigated. There was a lot of what we call DDM, dry digestible matter. So I put them on there and got a week out of it. I actually left them there until I think around the 10th of January, and then I moved them to another piece in Thanksgiving Point. And then we just moved them again last Sunday back out to Eagle Mountain. And depending on how the weather goes and if things grow, we'll come back and cycle through these parcels again. But I am actively involved in the cattle business. The expectation of profit thing was kind of interesting to me. That's always been our goal. The last 2 years, I'm not going to lie, have been tough. And I'm always looking for places to put cows. It's been tough to farm because most of the ground that I have, I lease the shares, and with the drought, I've lost most of my water. So we're buying hay and trucking hay and doing everything we can to keep it going. But I have been there since 2013, actively using this piece of ground.
Okay.
So, yep.
Thanks, Carl. Looks like Commissioner Gardner's joined us. Can you hear us okay, Amelia?
Yeah, I can, and I've been on for a minute. I just barely became a panelist, but I've been listening.
Okay, terrific.
Well, when we've had this in the past, thank you, but when we've had this in the past, we've made some adjustments, or we've had to refer to the county commission to make those adjustments. I'm trying to recall how we worked that process, because this is an area wasn't because of their lack of focus on production. It was the fact that they were prevented from producing, either because of the state or the city interfering with water access. And then the drought followed up with that. We've had similar appeals to this one in the past, and we've worked with it. Can you talk us through that, Ben?
Yeah, so,
Well, and I think there's a provision for drought. I mean, in the Greenbelt, there's a provision that if there's drought and that's the reason that it's not producing, that as long as if we have record of production prior to drought and record of production after, there are provisions there as well.
Right.
Yeah, there's some specific language in the Farmland Assessment Act and other parts of the code that talk about through no fault of their own. We've anticipated in cases of fire where there's been burning that reached into the farmland. What the assessor's office looks for is the indicia of that active devotion to agriculture production. So when the taxpayer tells us that during 2019, 2021, nothing was happening there, we look at things like, was it imposed by their own fault? Did they get some benefit with the state in selling parts of the land to develop Triumph Boulevard or whatever? We look at whether it was self-imposed hardships. We look at questions like, are they taking the steps and providing the documentation that they are doing everything that they can? Have they planted? Have they found ways to get alternate water there? And can they document all of that for us? And that's what we haven't seen in this case. There are provisions in the state law that deal with situations where through no fault of the landowner, it was impossible to have production, but we still expect to see the efforts to produce in all of their details and the documentation to support those efforts. Maybe it'd be a good opportunity to invite Diane up to talk a little bit about her thinking and what she saw on this property and why that rollback was decided upon. But we're looking at those preceding years, and so typically we would recommend that the rollback be imposed, that the application for an appeal be denied, and then give them an opportunity to get back on Greenbelt if they can get cattle there, if they can start growing fresh things. And yeah, we can get into the details of how bees can be qualifying as a contributor to the agricultural unit, animal units per month, the agricultural production, but they're often not seen by the tax commission as sufficient on their own to produce. And so the cattle is helpful, fencing's helpful, the years are not the right years. Diane?
And the door has to remain open.
Yeah, it's an open meeting, so we typically leave the door open.
We normally do, but with this noise, I can barely hear you with the microphone.
Yeah,
Maybe we get a door stop and leave it open. Maybe
Crack it.
Crack it open a little bit.
yeah.
We're trying to avoid the appearances of secret meetings here.
Yeah, Jamie is in trouble.
So if you look at, we'll wait for Bert to come back. If you look at the aerial photos, that is obviously one of the things that I look at. The reason this was brought to my attention was because they are getting ready to record a plat, and that plat is also in your paperwork there. So they are going to be subdividing this parcel into more buildable commercial parcels and dedicating a section of road to Lehigh City. And so that's what got me looking at it. And when I did, I saw that there was no production from the 2021 aerial photography that we have. So I did communicate with them through emails, and those emails are also in your packet. In those emails, they said that they no longer had Carl Karen as their lessee and that they had gone with a new farmer. But now they're saying they've always had Carl Karen. So I kept getting conflicting information in order to kind of pin down some of this stuff. In speaking with Carl, and what he just said right now was that in 2020 and in 2021, he did not have any production on that piece. And then after they got rolled back on December 14th, then they fenced it, and then they put his cattle on the last week of December. So it appeared that for 2022, the only production was that last week of December. For 2021, no production. For 2020, no production. So they sent me in these emails, they sent me that letter from the beekeeper, and he said that he had approximately 6 beehives on the property, and that's when I said that that would not qualify. And then that's when they decided to try to find some other way to get qualification. So it appears from that, and from what I experienced, is that agricultural production was not their number one thing or even a thought. So when they lost their water in 2019, They didn't care that much because agricultural production wasn't what they needed water for. So usually I see people who are farmers who want to continue farming and development encroaches around them and ditches are filled in, and it's very common for farmers to lose their water based on development. They are down at the city council and they're protesting the fact that the developer filled in the ditches because they still need to get their water. This did not seem to be the case. I spoke with Lehigh City on this. That's who gave me that plat that's in your packet, was Lehigh City. And they didn't even know anything about the fact that they had lost their access to water. They did tell me that water had been deeded to the city from these parcels years ago when the original development had been approved. So that's what I know about the water. As far as drought, we could say all the farmers in Utah County wouldn't be farming for the last 5 years if we say that nobody farms because of a drought. So usually farmers will become creative, and that's what Mr. Karen has done now. They've fenced it and they've put cattle on it now. So he has a harder time growing a crop on it due to that lack of water. He did say that to water his livestock for that last week of December, that he does have permission from Lehigh City to use the fire hydrant to fill up the cattle's water. So that's what I know. I know that originally the story was that they no longer had Mr. Karen as their farmer and they had gone with a different farmer, and that was the beekeeper. And then now they've got Mr. Karen back. But there was no production in 2020, no production in 2021, and in 2022, the only production was 1 week of cattle on it the last week of December.
Can I ask you you said approximately 6 on the beekeeper?
That's what the letter said. The letter said approximately 6 beehives. I chuckled on that too because I don't know how you could have approximately 6 beehives. You either have that or not. But 6 beehives would not have qualified them on this 16 acres.
That's my next question. Okay, so that,
How many beehives you need per acre? Is it 5? 50,000 bees?
50 beehives, I believe, per acre was when we had the last big beehive meeting, which Commissioner Gordon was not present for.
thank you, that's what I was asking. That's
6
helpful
beehives is extremely minimal for that kind of acreage.
for 16 acre. Okay,
Any follow-up questions?
I think you had your hand up, maybe wanted to.
So I don't know if you guys have a copy of the letter that I wrote in April of 2021 in your packet. If you do, I don't know if we could pull it up or take a look at it, but.
Bert, perhaps, that. Okay.
So a couple things about water in Lehigh City. You could talk with Craig Allred or Curtis Chatwin. One of the concerns with the siphon, and I don't know how many are familiar with what a siphon is, but basically the water goes in on a high side, goes underneath the road and comes out on the low side. The city was actually concerned that it was a safety hazard because you had an open manhole with a drain on top, and then it literally dropped almost 38 feet straight down, went underneath Triumph Boulevard and would bubble back on the other side. And so the city was concerned, and the storm drain department had serious misgivings about the siphon remaining. And in fact, I'm pretty sure it's been filled because it was a safety hazard. I would disagree that I wasn't actively farming. I wrote this letter back in January. No, there's another letter that predates this.
I believe that's the only letter I have in the packet. Hang on.
It's in my documents, Bert.
Okay. It's in Assessor Docs?
Yes,
Yeah, I believe that's what I've got open. That's,
and it's dated April 26th of 2021. Nope, keep going.
No.
That's the beekeeper. One more down, Bert.
one more down? This one.
There it is.
Okay.
Okay. So this was a letter that I wrote on April 26th of 2021, and it kind of laid out what I'd been doing with this parcel. You know, I've farmed this piece of ground for the past 9 years. The summer of 2019, I grew 80 tons of three-way. That was actually sorghum, Sudan grass, and then planted the filled-in dryland pasture grass blend. I planted it in the spring of 2020. You know, you plant, you plow in the fall, you work the soil, and you typically plant in the spring. And so in 2020, I did work the ground, and I planted it in the dryland pasture with the intent of grazing 2020-21, and I actually wrote that in this letter. And I had high expectations, you know, that I was going to, you know, do really well on this piece of ground with the dryland pasture, but the reality of it was it came up, but very minimally. And then last year, you know, summer was great, and then, well, when I say last year, I mean this last summer. You know, we had a pretty good wet summer, and then in the fall we had 13 days in September that were over 100 degrees, you know, and so everything kind of parched again. And so I guess my point is that I was actively working the ground and had a plan and had intent, and that's evidenced by this letter that was written in April of 2021, kind of laying out what had happened in the past. You know, I am always behind on fencing. I mean, I'm always building a fence. Built 3 miles this summer. Got another 3 miles in front of me right now out in Eagle Mountain, and one of the challenges is I own a half an acre, but I own almost 300 cows, and you know, I'm always moving cows around, trying to find pasture and find grass. But I guess my simple point is that to say there was nothing happening. Now, do I call these guys and talk to them all the time and know what their intent is? Honestly, I don't, you know, because I'm just trying to find holes to plug cows, and I think this letter and the date, you know, shows that there was intent and there was a purpose, and I'll just let it end.
Thanks,
with that.
Carl.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have something you wanted to?
I can appreciate the fact that the plat sounds like was the trigger for Diane to take a look at this. We were required to build a road for Ridge Drive, which is in a north-south connector, because you only have a one-way frontage road right there. And so Ridge Drive is the only way to get north and south, and then, unless you go up SR 92 and then down Triumph Boulevard. That road was built, that plat was recorded for the purpose of dedicating that and eventually being able to do development. There's not going to be development happening on that site in the near future. And I know that Diane had anticipated that was about to be happening. It's not about to be happening. We don't know when that will happen, given the current macroeconomic conditions. With respect to the bees, I don't have a good answer for you as to why there was only 6 beehives there. That's a bit of a, from the principal's standpoint, I'm kind of scratching my head on that too. If I were you, I would be doing the same thing. But the intent and the condition from 2014 until now has been to actively farm that site to have greenbelt status. And the overlap of Diane saying bees and 6 bees is not enough and bees don't qualify unless and this and this, it was a panic on our side of, well, we need to do something because that's a significant gotcha. And that's what it kind of felt like, was a gotcha as opposed to intent. Our intent has been the same since 2013 until now. And that's why we panicked to get the cows on there as quickly as we did to avoid a gotcha. And our intent going forward will be the same, to maintain that greenbelt status until that point. And we're going to abide by every single crossing T and dotting I to maintain what we've tried to do since 2013.
Did you contract with another farmer besides Carl?
Just for the bees.
That was the bee.
Yep, that was the
situation.
beekeeper.
Okay.
He came to us and said, hey, I know that you have property there. I can run bees on that. And we said, great, throw bees on it. But why there were 6, I'm as confused as you are on that. I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay.
Certainly would have 60,000 if that's what it took, whatever we needed.
We have made exceptions in the past because of the drought. That's the underlying thing of this whole effort. And that's what I'm leaning toward is allowing this because of the drought. And again, we've had, I don't know how many we've had similar to this that were related to drought. Certainly fencing is an issue. We've had that, a recent one about 6 months ago, that there was fencing that was missing near a developed area. And that one, I believe, was also resolved.
The actual language of the statute that deals with the waivers found in section 59.2503, subsection 5, and it says the commission or county board of equalization may grant a waiver of the requirement that the land be actively devoted to agricultural use for the tax year in which the land is being assessed under this part upon an appeal by the owner and submission of proof that the land was assessed on the basis of agricultural use for at least 2 years immediately preceding that tax year, and the failure to meet the agricultural production requirements for that tax year was due to no fault or act of the owner, purchaser, or lessee. And so that's the provision that we have used in the past. It does allow a waiver, but it has the strict requirements of a showing of proof that the failure to meet the production requirements was based on no fault. And then there's a subsection B of subsection 5 that defines what couple of categories of what can and can't include fault, or how fault should be viewed. And so planting certain kinds of crops, knowing that they don't produce or won't mature, is not fault. And so there's things to look at there if you're interested in going down that route. From our perspective in the assessor's office, the argument that we make is that we're not challenging their intent. They intended to have the greenbelt status. Everybody likes to have the preferential tax treatment of the Farmland Assessment Act if they can, but what we didn't see was the agriculture production for multiple years, not just the tax year, but every year since 2019. The assessor's analyst didn't see the production that was required to be eligible for greenbelt, which is why we saw the rollback. If you wanted to use that, that would be the provision that you could try to work this into. Our recommendation, again, is that it be denied and that they get on greenbelt status in the future. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
It does, but at the same time, I'm thinking of the 5 years of drought that we've gone through that we're just beginning now to get out of, that I think has some credence to this. Loss of the water in 2020 seems to add credence to this.
That's what I'm hung up on, because as our Gordon family farm, we've still farmed through the drought.
Yeah.
But my hang up is the loss of the irrigation, right? And you know, when, I don't know if Andrew or Kelson said it, but we lost our water rights, right? And I'd like a little more clarity on losing the water rights, because I guess, like, well, I think Diane touched on it. If my ditch is getting filled in, right, I'm going to be saying, hey, developer or city, somebody's got to help me irrigate my crops, right? We would certainly do that at our farm, right, in Spanish Fork. But so can I get some clarity on losing the water rights, basically a little more on that?
Yeah, I think losing the water rights was the wrong term to use. We didn't lose any water rights.
Okay.
And to Diane's point, water rights were dedicated to the city when you have a development, when a concept plan was originally approved. So that all did happen. We didn't lose any rights. To Carl's point, we lost the ability to bring the water through that ditch because of that road. And I guess at that point, you really have two options. You have the approach where you're saying is, well, we find another way to get water to that site, or we farm it a different way. And Carl's point is I farmed it a different way. I did a dry crop, and it didn't come up enough. We supplemented with bees, not enough, admittedly. And then when we realized that bees were not sufficient enough, we brought in cows. And this next year, we're going to make sure that we go in and do a dry crop. And with the amount of water that we have now, that dry crop likely will come in better than the last one did. Otherwise, we'll bring in cows and feed them with hay. But we will do whatever we need to do, and believed we were doing what we needed to do to this point. It wasn't just intent. We thought we were doing what we needed to do.
That helps me. Is the hydrant metered then from Lehigh that they're allowing you to?
The,
I pay them $100 flat fee,
Gotcha.
and then I give them a little report that shows how many times I filled troughs.
Okay.
So
So this is what I'm thinking on this one. I think we can kind of find a middle ground. I think it in technicality terms, I don't think it met Greenbelt. I mean, I do see the intent. I think the letter is the most important piece of evidence here that shows the intent, but the production nonetheless was not met. I don't think a road. I don't think they benefit from road. I think a road is kind of if you're not going to sell it to the city, they're going to take it anyway, i.e. eminent domain. So I don't think that them profiting from selling the land to the city kind of counts as them profiting because the access was cut off by a public utility, i.e. a road and a city. But we could do something like this. If we denied the appeal, however, they submit an application to the commission rather than the Board of Equalization, which we're acting as the Board of Equalization now. If the Board of Equalization denies the appeal, then before the commission, we ask for a deferral and an abatement that says that if you are back on Greenbelt status, meaning that you do plant your dry crop next year, that you do put cattle on that property, and that you do get back on Greenbelt status for 2 years, that deferral would become an abatement and we would forgive that rollback. So then we're following the process of the assessor's office, but still honoring the intent to farm and keep the farming. And all you have to do to earn that abatement, we'll defer it for 2 years. And then what you have to do to earn it is just make sure that you've been on Greenbelt, or something similar to that. Paul Jones has walked us through that before. But see, then we're honoring the intent to farm, but also honoring the process that maybe you didn't actually meet the requirement. So we're following the law, because if we grant this appeal, the state tax commission could overturn it anyway. They might not, but they might. And so if we grant this appeal, there's a good chance that you end up having to pay the $200,000 anyway, because the state tax commission overturns it. This way, there's not an overturning, and you prove to us your past intent by your future intent and your future actions.
So I don't need to plant it. It's already planted in dry land pasture. I don't have to go out and plow and work the soil. I just need rain. And
And
we can
to make
graze
sure
it.
that you've got,
Farming,
Yeah.
I guess some cattlemen don't like being called farmers, and some farmers don't like being called cattlemen.
We've learned that before.
Yeah,
Yeah. We had Eldon Neves here several times.
Okay,
making
all righty.
sure. He's a rancher.
He's a rancher.
Sure.
Yeah, he's a stockman
Sure.
or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So,
So it is planted, and one of the challenges, and if we could pull up, I don't know how much more time you want to spend on this, but to say that we should have gone and fought for the right to be able to irrigate this, if you went and visited the site and looked at what it would cost, Perry Homes and the different developers to get that water to that piece of property and the city, it just didn't make sense. I mean, it didn't.
well, I think that makes sense to me as well. I think that the intentions were to develop and maybe if it was,
Yeah.
if it was time for that, but
Yeah.
I guess, to Diane's point, like you would be saying, all right, you're going to take away my ditch. You got to help me provide.
Well, and I don't ever really know about all that. And I'm in development. I've been the project manager for Traverse Mountain for 20 years.
Okay.
So, I mean, when I started at Traverse Mountain, we didn't have a road. I built the first road, water tanks. I mean, I understand development. From the ranching side, I never know what people are doing, right? Because ranching is not the end game. It's my end game, but it's not always the end game, And so, but I just want to reiterate, the intent was always, and to stay in Greenbelt. And when you plant a new pasture, you never plan on typically grazing that pasture the first year, and sometimes it may take 2 years to get it established.
Right.
And so to say we weren't doing anything doesn't mean we weren't doing anything. We had done something with the intent of being able to graze it at some point. And clearly I feel like I did that.
And I guess a concern I have is if, hey, it's good this year, right? We got rain and your pasture's going to
Yeah.
do well. Just I worry about future,
Well,
going forward,
that's-
and that's
We all need to be worried about that. I mean, not only do we need to be worried about me grazing cattle, you need to be able to worry about drinking water.
sure.
I mean, my problem is a small problem compared to some of the problems you guys are probably going to face in the future.
Yeah,
And so,
that's why my mind went to
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
I think hearing lost water rights and that, I just needed to make sure I had some
we
clarity on
didn't
that.
lose water rights. We lost access to the ditch to get the water.
Yeah,
I mean, I have other water rights that from Lehigh Irrigation that I could have gotten water there. It was just physically impossible. I mean, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carl. How common then is what Commissioner Gardner is talking about doing for my,
It's called 1347.
Yeah, I don't know how common it is in other jurisdictions, but Utah County's done it a fair amount. You have greater discretion when you're wearing your hats as county commissioners than you have as a Board of Equalization. And you have the ability to defer and to abate taxes under the section that Commissioner Sakovich just mentioned. And so you have that option, and this board has done it not infrequently, I guess. We've looked at different cases and said, okay, well, we're going to deny this application potentially, but we're going to invite the taxpayer to come before the commissioners in their capacity as county commissioners and entertain an abatement and a deferral agreement. And often, as Commissioner Powers Gardner described, we typically would enter into an agreement with them, and we would say, you've got to get back on Greenbelt right away, and then we will defer for 5 years that tax rollback so that you can show that you've got 5 years, and each year 1/5 or 20% of that tax gets kind of taken care of and abated so that you never have to get hit with the whole rollback if you get back on Greenbelt and stay on Greenbelt. But it is a two-step process. They come before you as the Board of Equalization to make the request that they be left on Greenbelt, and if that's denied, then they come before you as county commissioners and ask for the abatement and deferral agreement. We've done a number of them, but
I think Commissioner Gardner said it best to me as I'm, now completing my second month as a commissioner. It's staff, because I hate not, accepting staff's recommendation, but staff sees it very black and white, right? Not the humanitarian side of things. And so, which makes life really hard for us, right? We're not only the Board of Equalization, then with the commissioners, right? That then see the other side of things. So it just seems very backwards to my city
Like
council
two,
days.
two sports
Yeah,
activities
I
here.
guess I get it, but so that's really the reason. And Carl, we'll talk about this all day. We don't need to rush this. So, to your point of, I don't know how much longer you want to talk about this. We'll talk as long as we need to. We want to make sure we get this stuff right. So,
So basically, it sounds like it's something that may be appealed by the county if we approve this. And then it would go to the state, and the state could potentially come back, say it's denied, and overrule what we do here. The other option is to allow us to go ahead and deny it, and then have you work with the civil division and work with the civil division to get this whole message brought to the county commission body, which would be the same individuals here, but us acting under a different environment where we're able to abate and defer. Did I get that right, Rob?
Yes, thank you.
That's an in-depth analysis. Thank you for that.
Well, I'm coming
Andrew,
from
did
Paul,
you
who
have
has
something else you
expertise.
wanted to say? on that?
I was going to respond to that if you want me to, but
Yeah, at the microphone, please.
So
Yep.
would you be okay if we were to deny this here and then bring it back to the county commission at a separate date?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that. I have no problem proving into the future that that's what our goal has been since 2013. Happy to do it that way. And I appreciate Diane's homework on it. I know she's doing a very thorough job. I appreciate, tell me your name.
Ben Stanley.
Ben's, I like you, seeing it from all of the perspectives. There's a black and white, and then there's a humanitarian and a tent. And my biggest concern was making sure we didn't get caught in a gotcha when we've been trying to do something consistently since 2013. And we'll happily prove that into the future to make sure that it's clear.
So what we'll do is we'll ask you to work with Ben, and he'll guide you the right people to work this up and when to bring it up next time.
Okay.
That work?
I did like Commissioner Gardner's approach to a 2-year as opposed to a 5-year. I don't know if that's a statute thing, but showing that forward for 2 years and then having that abatement come off. But happy to work with.
Yeah, he
Ben and
can
Ken.
work more on the legal requirements on that one.
Right.
Anything else to add, Commissioner Gardner?
Nope, you articulated it well. Thank you.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we deny agenda number 7.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that denial passes. So, thank you guys for your time. Okay, item number 8, approve or deny application for review by the BOE of Farmland Assessment Act status for Gillies, Bonner Elmo, and Diane Evans. Let's see here. Ben on this one. Ben, you want to introduce this?
Yes, so another Greenbelt or Farmland Assessment Act appeal. In this particular parcel, what we have is a couple of smaller slivers of property that that have been removed from Greenbelt with the rollback assessed on the basis of the fact that these smaller parcels don't, take a step back, there's a rule in the standards of practice with the State Tax Commission that says that smaller parcels can be put on Greenbelt even though they don't reach a 5-acre minimum requirement, which is one of those standard requirements of Greenbelt, if they are significant contributors to another parcel under the same ownership that is sufficiently large enough and are critical to that farm operation. And so if you have some small pieces and a larger piece that's on Greenbelt, you can get your smaller pieces considered part of the whole if they are really meaningfully contributing to that cause. In this particular application, the smaller parcels where a horse is kept, there's not the evidence that they are meaningful contributors to a farm production on a larger parcel. And so they were rolled back as insufficient acreage, and that's our recommendation. We can have Diane come up again and talk a little bit more about the specifics of this property and what she saw and what the aerial photographs that you have show. Go ahead, Diane.
So this is 2 pieces. One of them has a home on it, and the one piece runs along the frontage road and is, I think, 45 feet, and then the other one has the home, and then there's some corrals back behind the home. So just to kind of give you a visual, when an example of when a smaller piece can qualify with a larger piece is, say you have 40 acres and you have crops growing on it, grain, corn, hay, and then down the road a ways, miles away, you have a 3-acre piece, and that's your feedlot, your corrals, where all the cattle are. And you harvest your crops, and that's what you feed, and then in the fall, you move the cattle and you graze them on this 40-acre piece. So if you lost that 3-acre piece, if it no longer existed, would it impact your overall farm operation? In that instance, it would, because you would need to carve out 3 acres of the producing agricultural field to make your corrals, which would then reduce your production by that 3 acres of cropland. So that's an example of how we measure if a smaller piece is contributing. So if these 2 little pieces were not available to the lessee, because this the larger piece, which is down in Spanish Fork River Bottoms, is leased out. So if that lessee did not have access to these 2 little pieces, would his farm operation be impacted? And it was discussed that it would not. So the lessee owns other land, he leases other land, and he said, well, he would just move that one horse over back to his house. So he wouldn't have to carve out of the main acreage that is down in the river bottoms. It would be an easy thing and not impact economically or in any other way. So that's kind of the measurement that is used whenever a small piece is trying to qualify with a larger qualifying piece. Any questions on that part?
Smaller pieces, they're not producing is what we're talking about.
They have one
here.
horse.
Yes.
One
That's-
horse,
There's nothing else going on there.
nothing else. There's one horse.
Because I'm looking at the images and,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and it's just the long skinny piece. So there is a pasture next to that, but that's not owned by Mr. Gillis.
Yeah.
That's a neighbor.
Yeah, one of these images, I think I can see the horse there.
Yeah, it's a Palomino. Yeah. So the larger piece is still on Greenbelt. So that's not being discussed today. That is qualifying and that is on Greenbelt. It's just these two smaller pieces.
Thanks, Dan. Bonner?
You talk the smaller piece of, you talk the piece behind my house?
And it has your house on
Is
it
it
and
up
the
still
piece
on the green
behind it.
belt?
Well, it's not. That's what was taken off.
Okay. What it is there's 22 acres over in the river bottoms there.
Can we get you to say your name, sir?
Bonner Gillis. Over in the river bottoms there, and I made a land exchange on that. It's been 5.5, 6 years ago. But anyway, I transferred these two pieces have always been in the green belt. I didn't know the rules had changed any. But I did transfer them back over onto this 22 acres. It surprised me when I got the letter because I didn't know. But anyway, yeah, there's a horse on there now, but that thing in the past has had, it'll support as high as 3. If you irrigate it, and it's got my irrigation, it's got Springville irrigation, 2.5 shares. If you irrigate it, you fertilize it, and I've had cows there too. In fact, Lynn Swenson is the one that's a farmer with me. And we tried that here a while back with the 2 cows, and it's just a little bit cumbersome. They're hard to move, and actually they got out once. But anyway, there's a school down 2 blocks away and a junior high about 2 blocks. These kids come by there every day. There's a bus stop there. They hang their head over. And the reason why this particular horse is the one that spends a lot of time there is because that's the one that they hang their head on and everything else. I've actually had to get insurance to keep from being liable for something. And that's the reason right there. But what I'm saying about this is, and I've had good discussions with Lynn too, we can put 2 cows there, but the neighbors aren't going to like the flies and the smell and everything else they didn't before. And so, but I've talked to him, he says, hey, if that's what we got to do to keep it there, that's what we'll do. But those 2 pieces are irrigated pasture, just exactly like my 22 acres down there in the middle of the trail system in the river bottoms. If he didn't have the cows there, we talked it over. He says, if I didn't have the cows there, I'd have to have them pasture over somewhere else anyway. They're productive. A horse is productive because it is part of the tools that you use. Granted, you don't pull a plow with them like the pioneers did, but you have a heck of a time going and pushing cows around without them. And this is the reason why this is, it's not a life or death thing to me, but it just kind of, it's been there. And tell you the truth, I tried to get in here last month. This affects my nerves pretty hard. To have this kind of stuff hanging on. I believe in paying my bills. I like to take care of things. And this has been since January 9th, and I've tried to get in. I was really surprised because my letter, when it came to me, said, what was it? Our records indicate property identified by the above account number, insufficient acreage in this name. So I immediately went and got the parcel numbers, the 3 parcel numbers that Spanish Forks, my 2 in Springville. By the way, the one piece that we're talking about is only 45 foot deep. The section up the cemetery, my home was part of a big unit there. And he had that little strip that was by my house. It was weeds for a lot of years. He piled the dirt out of the cemetery there. So I went and cleaned it all up, planted it in pasture, bought water for it. And this is what I've done. But I don't want to turn that back yet. Hey, I don't want to do that. It's not deep enough to build on. I just, my opinion is I can put cows there if I have to. I want to do that part. I'm 82 years old, and, you know, I didn't let my schooling interfere with my education. I grew up on a farm, and I looked at things, and I kind of know what goes there. And if it takes something else to make that legal, or whatever we got to do, I will do it. It's just been one of those things. I've actually had Springville City. What I do, I've got it partitioned off, and I make the animal that's there eat it all down, and then I move it, you know, for that kind of a thing. I've actually had Springville City send me a letter that the grass was too tall. So I've had Rocky Giles is my son-in-law, but I've actually, he's got little cows, and I've actually halfway decided to put them there, you know, when I've had to. But it still is conjunction with Lynn. I've got to work with him. And that's where I sit. I appreciate you listening to me.
Thanks, Bonner.
Thoughts?
There was some discussion at some point about combining the rectangular piece with the main home piece, and that could potentially be pretty close, or there's money savings because of the residential. Can anybody speak to that? Maybe Diane or Ben? I'm throwing you kind of under the bus there, but
Not the first time, it's okay.
sorry.
So the .78 acre parcel, 23,054,0033, is the one that has his home on it.
Yep.
So off Greenbelt, he will get the residential exemption on the entire parcel because that's where his home is. Because per state law, you get the residential exemption on 1 acre, on the first acre of land. That little piece, the .24, is a separate parcel. So he will not get the residential exemption on that. Hypothetically, if it was all one parcel, then he would get that little extra benefit that the whole acre would get residential exemption. So that's what that discussion was. But as two parcels, it can only be the parcel that has the home on it.
Okay, thank you. Bonner, you want?
I've already looked into that, and the two parcels join each other at my residence.
Yep.
One's, it's L-shaped. They come in there, and I was told, John Penrod's a friend of mine, he's the attorney in Orange Springville. But anyway, his assistant told me that, yeah, I could get it surveyed. I don't know why I have, it's probably been surveyed, but hey, whatever I ought to do. I can get it surveyed, and I can join those two pieces, and it'll be one parcel.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
Okay.
Commissioners, I don't know if this is relevant, and I don't know if this necessarily would work, but I do believe through the recorder's office, without a survey, he can actually have them. He doesn't necessarily have to have the parcels resurveyed, as long as the parcels are identically titled and then recorded, the legal description, and then recorded on a single deed. We can actually administratively combine the two parcels into a single tax ID. So
Saving some
that
work.
might
Are they
not
the
necessarily
same, Bonner?
require a
Are
survey.
they currently the home and that property same name? You don't have one in like an LLC? It's all in the
Yeah,
trust.
if they're, as long as they're identically titled and then placed on a single deed is recorded with both legal descriptions on them, we could administratively combine them into a single tax ID parcel without actually necessarily having to combine them as far as a combined legal descriptions.
So with this one, can we approve the application based on this deed being, the two parcels being combined into one deed? Or did I miss something on this?
So you're asking whether you can approve today without, I would continue it and have it done first and then come back, is what
Okay.
I would do.
So basically, we were trying to help him with an alternative. So even if these were combined as one parcel, it would still be less than 5 acres, and it would still have to meet the same criteria that it doesn't meet today. But if he did this other route, then, and he's off Greenbelt, he would have the benefit of the residential exemption on all the acreage instead of right now only a the larger piece. So that was the way we were trying to help him figure out that he could get perhaps a tax reduction, and that was something he could.
Would urban farming status help? Would that be an
No,
annual
because he's
report?
not an
Does that
acre.
have
You have to
okay.
have at least an acre, and he's got his home on it, and he doesn't meet that. We looked into that too to see what we could do.
Just thought I would bring it up just in
Yeah, I
case.
know.
and maybe
But if we continued it, he could also do the math and say whether or not he wanted to do that, right? And then
Right. The combined acreage of the two parcels in question that are under the rollback would put it under a single acre, which means that if they were combined into a single tax ID, whether that was through, resurveying them and actually combined legal descriptions, or just simply administratively turning them into a single tax ID, it would bring the entire both parcels under the primary residential exemption, which would reduce the taxable value of the property by 45% automatically. The challenge there, of course, is that the value of that exemption may not be equivalent to the value of the Greenbelt exemption, but it would significantly lower the taxable value of the property than what it stands right now, at least on the smaller piece. The larger piece already has that advantage with the additional advantage of the Greenbelt rollback. Greenbelt is a very significant reduction in taxable value.
yeah, okay.
I'm Bert Garfield from the assessor's office. I think I just want to make it clear that we're talking about two different things here. One is Greenbelt and one is combining its parcels for the residential exemption. I'm concerned if you continue it based upon him combining his parcels, that somehow that makes some sort of connection between combining his parcels and staying on Greenbelt. But they're unrelated. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I understood that.
Just to reduce the impact that he's looking at right now.
Yeah, and a lot of people do this. They have a little side piece that's under their name with their house on it, and this side piece is getting taxed at 100% of its value. So they don't realize that. So eventually they combine it into one parcel, and you get that residential exemption. Plus, there's a little bit of a curve to the valuation of land. Your first partial, let's say your first quarter acre per acre is worth more than your second quarter acre, because people are buying a place to build, but after a certain point in time, they don't really care about any more land. So combining it will therefore make that extra land less valuable per se in an assessing point of view, and then he can get that residential exemption applied to it. But that's just an alternative to what you already originally would. So
Thanks, Bert. Appreciate that, Claire.
Yeah, I was just going to add to Mr. Garfield's point that because the two are unrelated, we don't see any value in continuing the matter, even if he were to choose that route to combine his parcels and get that tax benefit of the primary residence exemption. There's no change in what you would do when this came back before you. We don't see a value in continuing it. It ought to just be denied and allow him to pursue that, which is an awesome opportunity to find some tax savings there.
So, Gillis, would you be okay if we deny this so that you can go forward with the combining the property and have a reduced tax burden on it?
Is that my only other option?
It sounds like that's about it. Yes, sir.
Is the only value?
Well, the other thing is if we approve it, then, and it gets appealed to the state tax commission and the state tax commission overrules us, if that occurs, then we don't have any way to counter that.
So in other words, it could be denied by the state or be denied by us.
So in other words, it's going to be denied one way or the other?
It seems to be that way, yes. We could approve it now and just see what the state says. But given what we know, it appears to be that the state would rule in favor of denying this.
You know, on the humanitarian part of it, can I just read something?
Please.
Could I just say something? Because you know what? When I was a youngster, there was a place like this on every corner in Springville. There was green space. It was green space. Now you're calling it green belt. But you know what? Springville City and these cities are all looking for this kind of a thing. And yet we're denying it. We're taking it away. Can I take 5 minutes to just read something?
Sure.
This has been a real frustration to me, and it's been a constant companion for a month and a half now. $8,000. No, it's not going to kill me. A profile in courage is to say what needs to be said, not to be defiant, but to make people remember and be aware of what's happening around them. I'm saddling up, even though I'm scared. These statements absolutely have no intent of being a threat or directed at anyone maliciously. I don't want you to take this, what I'm about to say, personally, but as you politicians may take my message of frustration to someone that really could make a difference for the better, for better direction later. I'm 82 years old, and although this head of mine may look like it's worn out 3 bodies, it still reasons fairly well. I just don't understand or justify this recent action against me. I was raised on farm work, and from that I can truly say I didn't let my schooling interfere with my education. Have the rules changed? Or are we not going to be happy till we are surrounded by 10 plexes and high rises, red lights, no open green space? Will it all be asphalt and shingles where our grandchildren will have to grow up thinking you have to plant a chicken to get an egg? No smaller green space that everyone enjoys. I have people up and down the block stop every day and look at Rocky's stuff and mine that are there combined. Tell this to the good people in Spanish Fork with their ribbon of life trails that surround my 22 acres in the river bottoms. Is the only value or measure of these green belt spaces gauged in government red tape and overburdened taxes? Come on, be reasonable. Why shut down the people who are feeding you? The state legislature is up there right now trying to give our hard-earned money away. We as farmers are hanging on by our fingernails because it's our way of life and we love the way it used to be, even though we could save a lot of headaches and let the developers move in and give us the millions they're offering us. You can decide, green belt or high rises. If this doesn't qualify for green belt, a great environment and needed outlet for our overall well-being for everyone involved, nothing does. It's certainly not the country I grew up in. It used to be a country of the people, by the people, for the people. The way I feel right today, it's of the government, by the government, and for the government. With this $8,000 now added to my property taxes this year, I now have given over half of my Social Security to taxes for the year. This has made my mind up, and it will affect scenery and a lot of trail walkers in Spanish Fork City over there. In my 82 years, I've seen the best. Now it looks like I'll see the worst. That is if I live long enough. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bonner.
Thank you.
Any other questions for
Well,
staff?
I guess the big question I've got, I'm not going to appeal this any further. My head don't take this kind of stuff very well. I'll pay whatever I got to pay, I guess. But how do I get it to a tax status that I can stand? I guess that's after 45 years. This has been 45 years, Greenbelt stuff.
Would you work with Bert? Bert, would you work with him directly?
Okay.
Just pass your contact information that way he's able
Mr.
to.
Mr. Gilson and I have had several conversations, so.
Okay.
But yeah, the administrative way of doing that is actually fairly simple, and I can give you more information about that later.
Okay. Let me ask somebody anything else.
Commissioner Gardner, anything you want to add?
No, I mean, not at this time. I didn't know if you had any other thoughts on it, given, your whole 2 months in office.
Bringing all the good ones before me, aren't you? It's like you guys saved all these, and then.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely a tough one, and that's. I mean, oftentimes I'm very set in my opinions. I know that surprises everyone in the room there, but this one is a difficult one for me. So I do have more questions. I mean, I'm tempted to continue it just because my mind's not made up yet. But I don't know if anyone else has anything to add that can.
This has been Stanley again. Maybe it's helpful to just be aware. I mean, we're all very sympathetic to every taxpayer, and we're trying to find ways to help. The 5-acre requirement is something the legislature gave us. It's not something we can waive. There's got to be 5 acres to be eligible for Greenbelt, and so it's a simple mathematical thing from our perspective. We want to help everybody, and there's ways we can help by combining the parcels. But
No, I mean, but that's unless it's a significant portion of their income, right?
yeah,
There is an exception on the 5-acre rule.
It's all of his income.
all of whose income?
Lynn Swenson's.
Oh, I see.
His whole income is.
He is a full-time, that's
I see.
accurate.
Farm.
He is.
On these parcels. Lynn doesn't make any
Oh,
money
on the horse.
One other thing,
Okay.
could I just say, I have people constantly stopping by my place to offer me $70 to $100 a month to put their horse. They see that there with Rocky's mine around there. That if that isn't profit, straight profit, $100 a month to put 2 horses there, $200 a month. I have that all the time, but I couldn't do that. Lynn's got this part of it. But I could do it every day. I don't know why we can't consider it agriculture. It's exactly the same ground. It's irrigated pasture. The other is irrigated crop ground.
Yeah, the hard thing, as Ben pointed out, is that the state is requiring us to enforce a 5-acre minimum,
Has the rule changed?
not on the 5-acre part, no.
45 years I had.
Well, it's a 5-acre minimum unless it's a significant
I
portion. I think it's like 80% of
In
their
45
income.
years, I had it hooked to 6.5 acres. The asphalt and shingles took it over. And I took it over there on 22 acres is the best move ever made in my life. I could be a millionaire if I wanted to sell.
Do you have any other job?
Me, I used
And
to
do you-
cowboy a little,
yeah, do
but
you
I'm
have any other
82
job?
I'm 82 years old. I don't really bust Broncos too
She was
much
asking if
anymore.
this is a-
I do irrigate.
Right, that's totally fine.
I
Right.
irrigate. I
And so
irrigate
that's my point,
those
is-
2 pieces for Lynn. I do.
She was asking if this is a significant portion of your income from these 2 pieces.
That's exactly what I'm asking. Is this a
No, it's
significant
not
portion
my
of your
income. It's not my income, and it doesn't count on my. It counts on Lynn's. This goes on his Schedule F, on Lynn's. Although my Schedule F does have on what he pays me
Okay.
in Schedule F.
Right. So yours has on what he pays you, right?
Yes, mine has on what he pays me, and I give him a sweetheart of a deal so he can make a profit, if you want to know the truth.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had a little farm myself, and I think the tax write-offs are the only reason I ever profited, even though we did 2,500 pounds of cherries a year and had a herd of sheep. So how much does he pay you?
Do you need that figure?
Well,
I don't know whether
portion of your income.
I don't know whether he wants me to tell you that, but I will if that's needful.
But if this is affecting his income,
He gives me
Right.
He gives me $1,980 is what he gives me.
And you have no other income? I mean, no other job that pays you a
Oh,
1099 or a
Well, I'm
or
retired.
W-2?
I'm retired. Social Security, yeah, I'm retired. That's what I have, yeah. Thank you.
I could see it going either way. I could see if it's a significant portion of his income, which it seems to be the only portion of his income. He doesn't have any other job. So I could see it go either way.
Rob Moore, do you have any additional thoughts? Well, since we're in not an impasse, but maybe we should continue this for the next board to make sure that we've got everything else covered and other questions that are
I want to
percolating.
pay my money up front so I don't have interest on it, whatever you do.
What Section 59.2503 subsection 4 says is that if they submit proof that 80% or more of the owner's, purchaser's, or lessee's income is derived from agricultural products produced on the property in question, then you can waive that 5-acre requirement. And so if you wanted more time for him to produce those kind of documents, a continuation makes sense but that's the obligation on the taxpayers, to provide the proof
Okay,
that 80% or more is derived from agricultural
Of
products.
him
produced
or
on-
his lessee's income, right?
Right,
Of him or
yes.
his lessee's income.
Yeah, the owner's, purchaser's,
Okay,
or lessee's income.
Would,
Well, the lessee.
would he want to do that? Because I'm willing to make a motion to continue this to the next BOE if he wants to have time to show us that it's 80% or more of him or his lessee's income.
So is
It
that
is.
something you want to do, Bonner? I mean,
Would there be any question, it doesn't pertain to me on that, it's Lynn's income.
but what she is pointing out is that if it is your income, which it would be your, sole income,
Well,
or
Outside
80.
of-
The
No, this-
$19.50 he pays you is the only paycheck you get,
oh, no, that's,
right? So like if you were to show us your tax statement,
to
I
be
mean,
honest
I
with you.
I don't count Social Security because you're retired.
To be honest with you, I thought that it was his income that was the 80% or whatever it is.
No, it says the owner or the lessee.
Well,
There was not an and, it was an
it-
or there, right?
I don't understand that part of it, I guess.
Yeah, the way that I've been taught from the State Tax Commission, it's whoever's using the land. So
Yeah, that's-
in the terminology, it says owner or lessee, meaning if the owner is the one producing products on it, then the owner has to show 80%. If he has a lessee, then the lessee has to show that it's 80% from those two little parcels.
Yeah, that's the way
Can you do that, Bonner?
I can get Lynn's, I think Diane can pull Lynn's Schedule F up.
Oh, I don't keep them, I shred them.
Oh, do you?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want me to produce his Schedule F? He was calving out, he had cows calving
That's
out
what he-
today, and he excused himself. He says, I want to go with you. I want to hear this. But he's calving cows out, and you've seen what the weather is and why he's not here. But if you want me to get his Schedule F and prove that to you, I will do that.
So I would recommend, let's continue this, but ahead of time, work with Diane
Okay.
on what you need to provide. It's to establish this, the 80% income.
Absolutely. His income,
Yeah.
Lynn's. Absolutely, I will.
You okay with that, Commissioner Powers Gardner?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
So the next meeting is roughly when, Bert?
That'd be the next monthly BOE meeting would be March 30th.
March 30th is the next one.
Yep.
So I'll motion that we continue item number 8 until March 30th.
Did you hear
I'll
that?
second that motion.
Bonner? March 30th is our next meeting. Okay?
And you'll.
So that gives you that's when it's continued until.
Okay, for that meeting, then if I produce a Schedule F, or if I bring Lynn will come with me.
Yeah, have them bring, but have that information to her ahead of time.
Okay.
Have all your options.
We will do
at least
that.
figured
Thank
out.
you.
Yep. I got a motion by Commissioner Sakovic, a second by Commissioner Gardner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
continues.
Continue that. Okay. Thank you. Item 9, approve or deny application for review by BOE, Farmland Assessment Act for Ferry Road LLC.
Hello again, Board of Equalization members. Parcel number 232456 is 3.62 acres. So this is a very similar situation. It doesn't meet the 5 acres. It doesn't show any production. It's the only acreage shown in the ownership of Ferry Road. And so you can look at the aerial photography there provided in the packet from the assessor's office, but there's no production on this property and it doesn't meet the 5 acres. So our recommendation is to deny this appeal.
This is one that he says he's grazing on, correct? Which is in support of the production.
We don't see production in the aerial photography. The taxpayers here can speak to what he's done or not done there, but we don't see the production in regardless. It's not 5 acres, it's 3.62 acres.
Ben, could you also address the identical ownership issue? Is this the one that's identical ownership has an
This
issue?
one has no other properties in the same ownership, so this is the sole parcel in this ownership.
Okay. Thank you.
How we doing? I'm Jamie Evans. Can you pull up the parcels? Because we fixed the problem. We own all the parcels around there. For some reason, which my wife is the one that did it, and she passed away here just about 10 months ago, so I don't know why. All the other parcels are in Ferry Road, and it is now in Ferry Road when you pull it up. Pardon me? Right, I'm sorry, Riding West. Ferry Road was just one of our other corporations, and it is part, so when I go to argue with Peter from your division, and I do that every year.
It doesn't sound like you.
Nope, not me. Peter's a great guy for you guys. He knows his crap he's hard to negotiate with, but it's here and there. But if you pull it up from the county now, you'll see it's all put together in Ferry Road, and it always has been. Riding West. Ferry Road is another one of my corporations, and how it got into that corporation, I don't know. It all feeds to the trust, and all of them feed to the trust, and if you look, I own everything around there. We bought all of these parcels. There's 42 acres that we own there, but the only ones that were left in this is the ones that we were doing the green belt with. It's all of this here, and it's all, if you pull up a recent one, you'll see that it's all joined together now. I went and joined it back together. I don't know how the one piece is. Are you pulling this off the county website?
Yeah, that's right off the parcel map. It just may not.
Because the one I pulled it off this morning, it's all put together.
Okay.
I've got it recorded and everything's all put together. There you go.
Yeah.
That's the new one.
There you
It's
go.
got the new parcel number and everything to it. And it has always been grazed. Murdoch's had their cows there for 20 years, but we changed it over to sheep, and we've got the letter from Olson's. And the reason we changed it over to sheep was the cows don't eat down the wetlands as good, the wetland plants. So some of the wetland plants were coming out, and I fought with the Army Corps, and I know how to get rid of those plants, and how you get rid of those plants is take sheep and goats and chew them all down and plow it and irrigate it. But this has 27 acre-feet, this has 28 shares of water on it, and it gets irrigated. And the back piece there is where they've always put their hay. There's nothing on there now. Now, the sheep did get out. We've only had sheep on it for 2 years, and I've got the letter. We had cows on it for 20 years before that. But they didn't have a report, but Springville City has called 3 times when the sheeps got out. But I couldn't pull a report from Springville City Police, because that's the best evidence I could bring that we have sheep and stuff on that every year. But that's the reason why. What questions do you have for me? And it's a clerical error that it's in one of my different corporations, and I think there's something in the code that'll allow, let's ask the attorney, is there something in there where you can own it in separate corporations as long as you own the whole dang thing?
Unfortunately, I don't see it we don't read it that way. I'm looking for the exact section that talks about the ownership title, but I don't know if that helps you.
How do, when we tax this, we have to, when we argue this, we tax this as an economic unit, because we have to tax that, we have to split that out. And so even if it's in different corporations, it is owned by an economic unit. So whether I made a mistake there in when it was recorded, but it's all in the same economic unit. So we argue that every time. So I don't know how that affects it, but that's how Peter has taught me. No, I'm not. You have to argue it with Peter as an economic unit. Go ahead. Come on.
Yeah, so what the code section, the definition, it's in 592502, subsection 3, talks about identical legal ownership means legal ownership held by identical legal parties or identical legal entities. And so it's got to be the same entity that holds both properties. If one's going to be under the 5-acre amount and it's going to be combined.
Can you read that again? Because we read that one more time.
Yeah, so it says identical legal ownership means legal ownership held by identical legal parties or identical legal entities.
Okay, so legal party. So if the party owns both of them, it makes that one entity. Is that correct?
It's got to be the same legal party and so, or the same legal entity, so it's got to be.
Legal party. So am I the party that if I own it all in different corporations, I'm the legal party, or do you read it different than that?
I read it differently than that. I think the legal parties are Ferry Road and Riding West. Is that the other one? Riding West?
Riding West.
And so now they are in the same identical legal parties. It sounds like you made a change at some point and brought this Ferry Road.
When you guys notified me, then I noticed it wasn't in the same corporation, and I don't know how I got into one of my other corporations, but at the end, it's all owned by the same trust, and which the trust is, when the trusts are set up, they all feed to the trust. All the LLCs are owned by the trust, and I own everything in the trust.
Yeah, so we don't see those as the same legal entities, even though the trust is the same. The party that owns the title of the property was in two different names at the critical point here, which is the unfortunate thing, because it can be fixed. It sounds like it has been fixed. And they're now every parcel is in the name of Riding West.
Every one of them, and some of them are in the greenbelt, some of them are not, but every party is in.
So yeah, going forward, it ought to be able to be, even this piece ought to be able to be reestablished on the greenbelt from our perspective.
I think Jamie addressed my question, which was why, what was the reasoning for doing Ferry Road? And it sounds like your wife, who has now passed, as I know, she did that, and we don't know what that was for. And
well, it was just a mistake. It was just a clerical mistake. How it got moved into that corporation, I can't tell you.
So
that was the.
So if you want to continue it, then we can watch and see that the recorder's office processes that and that it does what he says it does.
It's already done.
So, yeah, but I, wouldn't know just based on that, so. And then that can be, taken care of. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Because it's already, that's what the legal parcel is now. That's what the legal parcel is now.
That parcel, that parcel is the current parcel, effective starting of 2024. So for assessment purposes this year, again, this is a bit of a separate issue. Assessment-wise, that parcel will be starting to be assessed in 2024, but the ownership and the accommodation has changed. But when we go to assess the taxes, we'll still be assessing it and taxing it as three separate parcels this year. But the ownership and all that has been recorded.
So the legal descriptions are combined, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say based off that, and that means that the document recorded, it's been worked and it's been applied.
They're all Riding West LLC.
And then its acreage has changed.
Yeah, it's got it. We had 14 acres. I mean, with this, we have 14 acres, and there was a clerical error. I mean, but I still believe I think I can still argue that the same ownership, however you read it there, I look at that as the same ownership as when you get to the top. When you get to the top, it's all owned by, well, it was all owned by Terry, but me and Terry, but she's gone. So.
And he was saying that the legal I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
The legal description, so there could be a central entity owning several other entities under it, and they have industries that are assigned to each one of those sub entities, and those are they oversee those separate tax issues. So what he's describing is what entity actually owns and controls this land. Am I getting that right, Ben?
Well, they are
And so
separate legal
that's who
entities.
pays the tax on that thing.
If you have separate legal entities, they are, in fact, separate legal entities. You can't, they're not the same. If you have ABC Corp. and DEF Corp., they're not the same legally. They have to be the exact same entities in order to qualify. And they're not. If they're not the same, they're separate legal entities. Another way you can approach this, one way is to go ahead and do the continuance and work through that process.
Yeah.
The other process you can do is what you did number 7, which is basically you could deny the request. You could look at it, have them come back to the county commission on the forbearance?
Yeah,
1347.
yeah, 1347.
And also have them file a new application under the Riding West. It sounds like it could qualify under these, but I mean, that's another way that you can address the same way you did number 7.
If you don't mind, the board, this is probably one of those reasons, this is probably one of those times where the commission passed the 1347, changes the law that we did a number of years ago. What's really going on here is there's a technical issue that has caused these properties to be filed out of Greenbelt. The ownership issue, because they've been recorded, you've got basically a new ownership, and so therefore, it'd be my understanding that he would need to do a new application anyways. But the use of the land doesn't sound like it's changed. If Mr. Evans can still produce the evidence that's showing that the property has stayed in production, even though the ownership has changed, that's where the 1347 law really was kind of designed to help, because the land has stayed in production. It's just a matter of a technical ownership issue. So yeah, the board would be to deny the appeal, have Mr. Evans do the 1347 through the Board of Commissioners, basically defer the taxes for up to 5 years and allow, and then have him do a application for a new Greenbelt exemption under the new ownership. And it would still have the same effect. It's just, a few more steps, but it would still do the same thing.
Could we have avoided these few extra steps if the clerical error didn't happen?
Well, the issue is that the ownership, the Greenbelt requires that the ownership be in the same, as Mr. Stanley pointed out.
Separate
It has to be, and if they're in separate entities, then they disqualify that. Assessment-wise, what Mr. Evans is talking about, it's just two different parts of the law. Greenbelt requires identical ownership. Assessment for under a economic unit doesn't necessarily have to be the same ownership to be considered the same valuation. It's just two different aspects. Okay. But yeah, anyways, that's.
So if we do that,
Okay, that'll be fine.
it's just gonna be more work for you.
It's
You're gonna have
okay.
to come to more of our meetings.
Well, it'll be,
See us.
you know the best thing. We're all here and we get to do it publicly. And if you guys haven't figured out, I'm going to fight to try to make sure we get the hearings publicly this next year. That Zoom does not get the job done. And I think in the state statute that I sent gives us the right to have it publicly and in person. The state statute, I think, gives us that right, and I will be here to make sure we get that
You
right.
were the one that closed the door, Jamie.
What's that?
You closed the door. We were trying to be open at meeting. You
But
closed the
I
door.
think the state statute gives us the right to do those appeals in person. And I was told we can't do that, and I think we can appeal that we can do our appeals in person, and I appreciate doing it in person.
So are we agreeing to have this one denied and then come back to the commission?
Same
for-
what we did as the first one.
That's fine.
Okay.
I don't mind doing the work.
So is that March 30th?
Yes, it would be,
It'd be a commission.
oh, I'm sorry, yeah, it would be the commission meeting,
It
which
would
would
be
be,
as soon as we could get on a commission agenda.
Yeah, we just have to get on the commission agenda.
whenever you're ready to do that.
Typically
When it
weekly,
warms up, and I want to come back here.
Wednesday meetings. Okay.
Just joking.
You're-
Thank you for everybody's help. I appreciate it.
Full disclosure,
These
my
guys
part-
are good to work with, and
Full disclosure on my part, Jamie and I went out for a couple hours about 2 years ago, I think, and looked at some of the ideas he has, so.
probably so, yeah. And I may get this, and I'll tell you, this property may turn into a school, so, but that's when
That's another time.
yeah, that's another day. But anyway, thank you very much, and I appreciate doing it publicly, and for the record, I want to make sure we can do our appeals hearing on the,
Condolences on your wife, though.
it's the way it goes.
Great lady.
Thanks, Jamie.
Just gotta, everybody tells me the only reason I was successful is because I married her. And I'm coming to find out there is more truth to that than you know. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jamie. So, Commissioner Powers, have anything more?
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion. Item number 9.
I'll make a motion that we deny this application and then work with, you know how to do the 1347? Okay, that we deny this application for agenda number 9.
Okay. Motion to deny item number
I'll second that motion.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, takes us to item number 10. Approve or deny application for review by the BOE of Farmland Assessment Act status for Erickson, Kent Erickson and Luann, serial number 27-033-0094.
Hello again, board members. This is the final greenbelt you've got and your final agenda item. This one is a 5.25 acre parcel that has 1.5 acres that have become the residential portion. There is a standard of practice 7.3.1 in the Tax Commission Standards of Practice that deals with the home site deduction and the residential exemption. And basically what it says is that the home site itself and property associated with the home site, like landscaping and that kind of thing, has to be excluded from the calculation. And so we see these not infrequently where a property has 5.25 acres, but the home site has taken more than a quarter acre and it's eaten into the required acreage to be eligible for greenbelt. And that's what's happened here. You can see from the aerial photographs the amount of landscaping and the size of the home there and how it's, and you can see the measurements there that put it at 1.5 acres, which means there's not 5 acres there, contiguous acres in agriculture production to justify the Farmland Assessment Act. And so, so that parcel has been rolled back and we would recommend you deny this application as well.
Thank you, Ben. Is the property owner here?
Thank you for your time.
Kent, is it Kent?
Kent Erickson,
Okay.
yeah.
Erickson, thank you.
Kent Erickson. And boy, after listening today, I don't know what's going to happen. I think I don't have a chance. Just by introduction, yeah, I grew up on a farm, and was it Mr. Gillis? Is that his name from Springville? And boy, yeah, that's my dad. That's my grandpa. We're from Cache Valley. We have one of the few centennial farms in the state. And in fact, I just purchased the original 10 acres there that my great-grandfather purchased in 1897. So
Up in Cache Valley?
Up in Cache Valley. Yeah, my brother owns the rest of the farm. Grew up on a 400-acre dairy farm, so milked 70 cows night and morning for way too long. But anyway, that's another story. Yep. My wife and I moved here in 1982 with 2 kids, and we've raised our family here in Utah County since then. The home we bought here in Mapleton was built by a person named Richard Casper in the 70s. And you can see the home roof is right there. That's the same footprint of the existing home, of the original home. We just remodeled basically the whole home. It was built in the 70s when we bought it in 2005. Of course, change of ownership, we had to apply for greenbelt, and we did, and we were accepted. The county gave us a greenbelt because nothing has changed. No other configuration of the yard, no other configuration of the home footprint. The land itself, the fences, nothing's changed since then. In 2006 when we were granted greenbelt. So here we get the letter, like Mr. Giles got, surprised us. And it caused us some dilemmas, like, well, what's changed? That was some questions, you know. No act of ours, what has changed? What caused this? We didn't know. What's different? We haven't changed the use of the land. It's been grazing. We've raised 12 horses, 2 colts, two beef cows. We've had neighbors use it, help us with it, and so forth. And then I come and pay the bill because I have 30 days to pay. Of
quite a bit of money to pay the back taxes. Again, we're wondering why. So we came in and paid the bill. The treasurer's office asked me, boy, this is kind of tough. Why don't you see if you can use the Utah Urban Farming Assessment Act option? I never heard of that. And they said, go across the hall to the assessor's office and ask for the pamphlet. So I did, and I looked at it, so it seems like I can get, qualify for at least more than 1 acre and maybe less than 5 and try to do that. Then I find out there's a deadline of May 1st I've got to apply, but I had to pay the bill anyway, so we paid it. And so we're just kind of like in these dilemmas, and it must be irrigated, and we irrigate as much of this as we can, because again, we don't have any ditch access to this property, and we've been told for years that we would get pressurized irrigation to the south end of Mapleton for 8 years ago, and they said, no, it's not coming ever now. So we only have 2/3 of the city under pressurized irrigation, so we use city irrigation water, and it's expensive. So the final third dilemma we have is it feels like we're being forced or pushed to subdivide. I've got neighbors who want this property. I've got builders who want it. Everybody's subdividing, and I'm thinking, we have no plans. We have no desires. We bought it for our horses and for animals because I have to have them around me just to keep my sanity. And so we're just trying to figure out, okay, we always knew that if we ever did subdivide for the kids down the road, grandkids, whatever, we'd have to pay the rollback tax. But now we got to pay it now, and we have no plan. So we're like caught in that bind, So that's all I have to say is, at least offer people in our situation, heaven forbid, or have the lawmakers say, hey, there's another program you could try to get to before you jump into this rollback and then tie up all your savings into that. Or, and where we haven't changed any land configuration or done anything different, we're stewards of this land. It's been approved and we've been operated by the county, so for years and years, maybe not 45, but certainly since 2005 when we bought it, and we got the application 2006 done, so it was fine. And now I got a rollback. So I'm just asking, what can we do? And maybe I have no idea. I mean, I just kind of feel like it's just been one of these taking kind of situations for us with no active hours. We're caught. And it feels like that's what we're kind of seeing and happening. I wish others were here too that left, but they're under pressure. Something's going on to hunt for these greenbelt properties and do something all of a sudden, and I don't know what's changed. And I feel targeted, and I guess we're doing our part. We apply Schedule Fs, we do things anyway. We're kind of caught in a bind, so anything you can help us with, if not, then we'll probably sell the property. Developers, bankers, they're all over this valley. They can have it, I guess.
Thanks, Kent.
So my recommendation would be to deny this and then to have him apply for the urban farming, and then go through the deferment process on the portion that qualifies for urban farming, which wouldn't be the 1.5 acres. So, and even though you've paid, we've had others that have paid, and then it gets a refund with each year that you're on, though we haven't actually done it yet because this is our first year. But they are working on a program so that would be a more automatic thing that could happen.
So I think that's, to answer your question, Kent, a couple of things. It is the first year, so we are learning. The other point that I did want to point out was we don't target currently. They're going through Springville and Mapleton. That's why you see, the Springville Mapleton. Granted, we had a Lehigh property today, but you see those now coming through because that's how the county does it. Just wanted to make sure that you knew that it wasn't just a targeting of you. Nobody complained.
I just feel that way.
I understand.
Understand.
Okay. Just want to make sure that was understood.
Yeah. Well, and maybe there was a trigger because we did some family estate planning, and we put it into our trust about 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe that's what triggered something. And I heard there was a major software update in the county that started figuring out some better tracking of property parcels and things like that. So maybe something else brought it to light. I don't know, but that doesn't matter. It's what it is. It's what the law, and I just want you to know, we want to be in compliance, but we want to be treated fairly because we bought this property disclosed to us as greenbelt property so we could have our animals and space on it. And that's the way we and have operated it that way. And now, boom, we get shocked. So if I go and apply for this urban farming, some land or less land here, I do get, let's say, and we qualify, we do all the thing, and now I'm a little upset about that law, but that's legislatures. They force you to irrigate when they also want me to tear my lawns out and plant desert stuff and not irrigate my lawn. That's kind of strange. But the money I paid, you say you give that back over years or pieces at a time? Or?
Every year that you're on urban farming, the year of the rollback drops off, and that money, if you hadn't paid, that money would drop off. But you paid it, so that it would be refunded. But you have to go 5 years.
So I shouldn't have paid it, because then I had my money in the bank, and then I could have paid you. But I was being a good citizen, because the letter says.
Some people have paid, and some
Yeah,
people.
It's an interest
it says billing due date
interest-free
September or
savings.
2/17 must be paid, must be in bold letters. Payment must be received by 2/17. I mean that's. I mean it's from the government, so you got to go pay. You know, and now it's like you're tied up my savings money for years, and I'll go get qualified, and then I'll get that trickled back to me. This feels like it's very, very
Can I clarify?
administered wrong. Yeah, it's.
It's horses that you're raising here.
Right now it is, yeah. We raised beef a couple years ago.
Beef. Can I ask you a question on
sure.
this? Is this a barn?
Yes, that's the barn that holds my tractor, and it's got 3 stalls for horses in it.
This is a shed
That's a temporary hay barn. I just put some panels and put a temporary roof on it. I just store alfalfa in there, and that
It's kind of
white
a
thing is
lean-to?
a trailer that's parked there.
Okay.
This is your
It's a-
garage,
That's the one end of the garage, yes.
and this one is
That's a larger garage, and that's the way it was originally. He had a mother's
a
quarter.
home residential garage.
Yes.
So technically then here, somewhere,
That's what I drew on the aerial. That's, to me, that's part of yeah, but
because to me, if that's the case, then we got a combined usage here.
Right.
But this is, to me, ag space here.
right,
Because it's directly supportive of
right.
production. We allow for barns, don't we, in this case?
I would have, I thought so, but
Yeah, we generally.
they drew the map around the whole thing on the aerial picture I have.
Yeah, so generally, if it's used for agricultural production, if it's part of the agricultural operations, barns and silos can be part of the production. Anything used in conjunction with the residents, there's residential landscaping, storage for the residents, that's all excluded from the calculation. So the challenge here for the taxpayers, even if you were to slice off those more agricultural buildings, you'd still have more than 1/4 of an acre that would be excluded, and it would not qualify for greenbelt, but it might qualify for urban farming. Urban farming has some downsides. Urban farms have to be requalified every single year. They've got to be on irrigated land under the state law and things like that. But it is an attractive option in this situation. The other point I would make about the deferral agreements is what the law requires is that the taxes be paid and penalties can be accrued if they're not paid timely.
Right.
It is a discretion of commissioners, a generosity to say we're going to waive some of that. It's not a guaranteed thing. This commission historically has been very generous with waivers like that,
I didn't know that. I've never been
looking
here.
for ways to help.
But I wanted to emphasize it because this area is yellowed in as part of residential. And this is a drive here, this is cement drive
Right,
in and out to the residential garage, right?
right, that's what that is.
So, to me, it reads, and this is well, it's got a couple windows on this side, but basically this demarcation line here separates the residential from the ag. And over this looks like it's better than 1/4 acre.
Right, but he's right, and he's correct that if you do take that into the agricultural space, you can see the front lawn, the side lawn, back lawn, the side lawn, and the size of the house. I mean, 1/4 acre these days is pretty small. I've seen 1/4 acre lots go around us that are pretty darn tight. That's more than a quarter acre of lawn, you know. I could, and I've told my wife, I'm tired of watering that front lawn. I'm gonna cut the driveway out, the circle driveway, and just extend my pasture over there. But she says, that's too much money to do right now. But, you know, I don't. And it's been this way since the 70s.
I'm just offering, if I got on a computer, I could redraw the line with what you're saying and you can see what the acres would be.
What would that be?
I'd have to do it
I
right
was
now.
gonna say, can you take it, how long would it take?
30 seconds, I just need access to a computer.
Should we pause for a commercial?
I know it's gonna be more than a quarter acre.
Yeah, it's
So
more than a quarter acre.
yeah, That's, so I'll have to look in detail. I just learned about the urban farming option, so I gotta read it, and a pamphlet doesn't tell me everything.
But in this case, if you have 5.25 acres dedicated to ag, then it may not be needed to do that.
There's not 5.25 acres
That's,
if you exclude the house. I know that. The whole plot is about 5.25 acres, I believe.
Yeah, the whole parcel's 5.25, and so if this blue section here is more than a quarter acre, it's too much to qualify for grain belt.
He said that front portion he wasn't using.
yeah, that bottom right corner, he's not using for ag.
This.
That's just I had some orchard trees in there that didn't make it. You can see one left.
Okay.
But that's,
That's residential.
but saying that, you know, even if I was just trying to point out that if we cut that back in the most generous way possible, that dark portion is actually 1.08 acres. So it's significantly higher than the quarter acre. And just for a administrative clarification, the Greenbelt lot, the 5.25 acres is a description that Utah County uses. What the law really says is that there has to be a minimum of 5 acres of production on any parcel of land. So if the parcel of land is 5.25 acres, that means they can only allow for a quarter acre of non-production use. That there still has to be 5 acres. If the parcel was 7 acres, there would have to be at least 5 acres of production, and they could use potentially up to 2 acres for non-production. So.
But the barns are part of the production.
Right, but that's what I'm just saying, is I'm just clarifying that the law really does specify that what we're looking at is that there's 5 acres actively dedicated to agricultural production, regardless of the total size of the whole parcel.
And on this screen, I can't read the writing. It's too grainy right now, so I can't tell what the actual supposed ag space is.
Well, the area marked in red, Commissioner, is the whole parcel.
Yes.
And the area outlined in blue is what I just picked out to say, okay, if we clearly say, okay, we're just going to count that as the home site, that part itself is larger than a quarter acre. And did I get pretty close to what you would consider the home site there? I mean, I could cut that back a little bit more, but to get to a quarter acre, I think we'd have to cut down just the house itself.
I know I fertilize half an acre of lawn, and I'm tired of it. So that's the point of it. But we didn't change any of that configuration. So that's the other problem.
Well,
I don't know if counting. There were a dozen head of elk and about 25 deer in my pasture. That don't count if I feed those. They were there last night. So.
Just see if they got GPS with your name attached to it.
Yeah. So it's a bind we're in. We got, and I guess we got nothing else to do. So it feels hard and tough because that's not the intent or use of the land we want. But we feel we're getting crowded out, and that's the nature of getting, I guess, the way the laws are built here and going. And I struggle because I felt for Mr. Gillis, and it's sad what we're doing as a society in this county, and I know in the state. My brother is a commissioner in Cache County, and he's going through the same thing throughout the county on 10-acre parcels where they're trying to take away county right-of-ways out of the 10 acres. Now people who have their 10-acre lots they plan to build or now don't have enough acres to build. So I think they just finally repealed that last week, thank goodness. It took them a while to do it, but they finally repealed that law.
So if we deny this, then we could go with the urban farming route.
I'll have to go apply and do all that work and
And it's
see,
a-
and then it's a
it's a-
year-by-year thing. And
Yeah.
She is
Right.
very helpful with that. I promise she will be a resource to you, and
All right.
you sound like me that you want to see it face to face and not get a brochure from
I,
what
I want to know
understanding.
exactly what I got to do because
I can tell you she will educate you and help you
Right.
with all you need to know
She's
about it.
profoundly thorough.
I
She
mentioned
knows
the
it.
neighbors and I are putting in a pressurized irrigation because we all have water rights. We're not getting access to it, but we've got easements coming from neighbors to get the pipeline built to us, and that's a big investment. And if we do that, then I'm going to have finally a chance to really irrigate this land, because flood irrigating this piece of ground puts water in the basements in all the homes west of me. And so it's dangerous to flood irrigate this land. So I want to sprinkle it and, or do something else with it, and then we can raise some, no more dry farm soybeans. We'll do something else with it.
So, okay. So if we deny this, then you can go work with Diane on the urban farming. Okay. Commissioner Gardner?
Commissioner Gardner needed to drop off. She just
Okay.
sent me a text message.
Then I'll make a motion that we deny this application.
Okay, I'll suspend the rules and second the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Thank you, Mr. Erickson, for your time. Okay. Seeing no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second and
And carried.
carried. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you, sir.